for you to wear.
What's that?
Put it on.
Why?
22 disturbing movies, 7 levels. This is the iceberg of cinema's darkest corridor. We'll begin with films that are merely unsettling, but as we plunge deeper, each title hides secrets more disturbing than the last. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Disclaimer. Level 1. Sleepaway Camp, 1983. Released in 1983, Sleepaway Camp stood out from the flood of summer camp slashers because it was less about graphic violence and more about what sat underneath the surface. The film follows Angela, a quiet teenager who arrives at Camp Arawak with her cousin Ricky. Right away, she seems different from everyone else, withdrawn, and so unlike the rowdy group around her it almost made her a target.
She's a real carpenter's dream. The lad is a board and needs a screw. That's enough!
Soon, camp activities take a turn. They find themselves looking at a boy who drowned. Then a giant pot of boiling water tips onto a cook, clinging to his skin and leaving him howling in agony. The movie shows his blistering injuries, with him clawing at his own face as the staff try to restrain him. People start dying in shocking ways. Wasp stings leading to a gruesome collapse, arrows fired in the darkness, and no one knows which cheerful face might be gone next.
It can't be you. It can't be. It can't be!
The film might have ended as another by-the-numbers horror entry if not for its final moments. After a string of incidents, the story reveals that Angela, the quiet presence at the center, is not who everyone thought. Angela is not Angela at all, but her brother Peter, raised as a girl after a family tragedy.
Why, I believe it means angel. Why, yes, I'm sure it does. I know you're going to like that name. Won't you, Peter?
The last scene shows her unclothed, her body revealed as that of Peter. He is no longer a girl living under the identity of his dead sister. This revelation comes hand in hand with the image of Angela holding a severed head, eyes wide, mouth frozen, in an almost animalistic growl. The Neighbor Number 13, 2005. The Neighbor Number 13 pushes viewers straight into the headspace of Juzo Murasaki, a man who never really escaped the trauma brought by his bully Toru Akai during their school years. Moving into a shabby apartment building, Juzo finds his worst memories now living right above him. Alone in apartment unit number 13, he starts reliving his troubled childhood and beaten up past self. Paranoia starts creeping into him, and he can no longer contain his dark personality, his alter ego, number 13.
僕は重蔵じゃないよ。あいつが僕の分身なんだよ。
At the construction site, one coworker named Seki starts noticing Juzo behaving oddly and tries to warn Akai. But before he can get away, number 13 is waiting. With no drawn-out struggle or spectacle, number 13 kills Seki. The apartment complex isn't any safer. One neighbor runs into conflict with Juzo, and number 13 emerges. There aren't elaborate setups or chases. Instead, the killing happens almost as an afterthought, re-emphasizing how detached number 13 is from human empathy or remorse. One of the film's most infamous sequences involves number 13 holding a child during one of these acts, then later the child in a school bathroom, all played with a cold precision. The story makes it clear, when someone's suffering is never acknowledged or resolved, the result doesn't just remain hidden, it finds its outlet, often in ways nobody wants to imagine. Level 2. Eyes Without a Face, 1960. Georges Fragno's Eyes Without a Face from 1960 shuns the expected jump scares or the usual gothic tropes, but earns its reputation through its focus on medical experimentation taken to extremes. The film follows Dr. Genesier, a brilliant surgeon cursed with guilt. After a car crash that left his daughter Christiane disfigured, he was driven onto a persistent mission to restore her face.
Ne pleure pas, ma chérie, je t'en supplie. Je réussirai, je te jure.
Je n'y crois plus.
His obsession crosses lines quickly as he commands the abduction of young women. His assistant helps him lure victims without question, treating the process like routine work and bringing them to a secluded estate where victims are kept in a hidden lab with caged dogs and a grotesque surgery room. What unsettled audiences in 1960 and still strikes nerves today is how the surgical process is shown. Franyu does not rush through the operation. He shows how the skin is being carefully separated from the body, and Dr. Genessier removes their faces to graft onto her daughter. Throughout, Christiane's presence adds another layer of tension. Hidden behind an expressionless white mask, she drifts silently through the house, a ghost-like figure who reminds the viewer of the human cost behind her father's obsession. The mask itself became one of the iconic images of European horror. People fainted in early screenings because it resembles raw medical documentation rather than scary movie theatrics. The horror is not only the violence acted upon strangers, but also the quiet existence Christiane must endure. Trapped within anonymity, waiting for her father's next gruesome procedure, masked as a paternal duty. Strangeland, 1998. Strangeland from 1998 is known for how it dives headfirst into the darkest places the internet can take people, years before online chat rooms became a norm of daily life. Captain Howdy, who in everyday life is Carlton Hendricks, prowls early chat rooms looking for unsuspecting teenagers to lure with fake promises of parties and bonding. He draws in teens looking for the next rush and invites them to his home, which is set up less like a party house and more like a maze of suffering. The first clue that something is wrong is when Genevieve and her friend disappear after agreeing to meet this mysterious online persona. Howdy has his own justification for doing what he's about to do: spiritual awakening.
But try and help another human being achieve a higher level of spiritual and sensual awareness.
But his interpretation of a spiritual awakening gets horrifying fast. It's focused on inflicting physical alteration by force. His lair could just as easily be mistaken for an abandoned medical facility with surgical equipment scattered across tables. He pierces skin, jams metal through body parts, sews mouths shut. The victim is transformed permanently, stripped and left. When authorities find one of the girls, her body reveals the hallmarks of Howdy's obsession. Faces sewn shut, flesh punctured and distorted with needles, bodies branded, scarred, and contorted in excruciating new forms. What makes Strangeland so hard to watch is its insistence on confronting the viewer with the unvarnished face of fetish culture, twisted into something brutal and non-consensual that is still a relevant conversation even decades later. Of course, we wouldn't take you to those creepy chat rooms. You'll just be able to keep watching videos like this if you hit that subscribe button. Level 3. Freeze Me, 2000. This movie is all about Chihiro, who's struggling to live an ordinary life in Tokyo, working in an office and getting ready to marry. There's no peace, though. The men who hurt her years ago come back into her world and decide she shouldn't be allowed to move on. The encounter isn't just a random intrusion. These men filmed what happened to Chihiro in her hometown 5 years earlier, and the tape became their weapon. It's how they try to pull the strings, making sure she stays silent and afraid, threatening her job, her relationships, and her future. She feels even more trapped when one of them shows up at Chihiro's apartment, breaks in, and tries to restart her suffering. Then, under extreme pressure, Chihiro does something drastic. She eliminates the threat and locks the body away in her freezer. With the first body hidden, the process repeats. The other two attackers arrive, each confident they can control Chihiro, but the tables turn. She takes them out too, one after the other, each event a little less shocking as her fear gets replaced by numbness. She's no longer just a target. Now, she's taking charge, buying more freezers until her home feels like a morgue, almost a museum of horror. She's completely isolated, not just from friends or colleagues, but from reality itself. The chilling thing is how normal it becomes for her to check on those freezers, sometimes even talking to the dead, making those cold boxes the one part of her life she controls. She loses her job, and when her fiancé discovers what's happened, he abandons her, adding another layer to her torment.
話がしたいんだ。説明してくれる？この人が誰で何が起こったのかさ。したのね。俺たち3人で。
Towards the end, even the fiancé isn't spared. The freezers keep filling, the apartment chokes with death and silence, and Chihiro loses her grip, slipping into her self-made world until nothing is left but the cold. K-Shop, 2016. K-Shop doesn't bother to sugarcoat its premise or soften the violence for the faint-hearted. Salah, a British-Turkish student with dreams far beyond his family's greasy kebab shop, finds that every night the drunken crowds become more aggressive, more careless, and more cruel.
Two parties involved in a large altercation?
Yeah, it all happened pretty quickly. It was more like a brawl, to be honest.
Great.
Do you not need anything else?
When his father's life is ended in the shop during a clash with a group of intoxicated customers, the everyday tension boils over instantly. Salah is alone, overwhelmed, and stuck watching the worst parts of British nightlife unfold just outside his shuttered windows. When Salah accidentally kills a violent patron during one of his nightly confrontations, he then proceeds to dispose of the body in the only way he knows, where he spent his whole life in the kebab shop.
Hi, I just slammed on head into the fryer and yeah. Oh, well, that's perfectly reasonable, Mr. Kebabman. We'll just come over and pick up the body.
From the bubbling hot fryer to grinding and portioning out the meat, there are no quick cuts to spare viewers from the stomach-turning reality. The story almost tricks you into believing this could truly happen on any typical party street. Soon, word gets around that Salah's kebabs taste better than ever, and the intoxicated regulars keep coming back, demanding more. The cycle ramps up, blurring necessity with obsession.
Mate.
That's awesome. That's the best kebab I've ever had.
Every new customer becomes both a potential threat and an unwitting participant in Salah's version of justice. The truly haunting thing is watching Salah slip further as his psychological strain is laid bare. Each act is colder than the last, each victim more easily justifiable in his unraveling mind. Autopsy, 2008. The Autopsy from 2008 never lets viewers relax. A group of young adults badly shaken after a car crash ends up not in the hands of friendly caregivers, but in a hospital in Louisiana that quickly reveals itself as far from safe. They wake up inside Mercy Hospital, but each patient gets separated, with Bobby out of sight almost instantly, leaving Emily and the others to navigate the suspicion and dread that lurks in every hallway. One of the other characters, Jude, became restless and bored. He wanders off only to be led into a drug haze and locked in an autopsy room surrounded by sharp tools and left to trip out among the body bags.
Bro. Check it out. Are you kidding me? Hey! Hey, come on, man, this ain't funny. Hey, come on, man, I just dropped this fucking thing.
Dimitri is next, horrified first by a neighbor in the next bed gushing blood. Then he was cut open and his organs removed, placed on ice by staff who don't blink at what they're doing.
Doctor, am I going to be okay?
I don't think so.
Claire is left to wander, only to be lured deeper into the facility. She's attacked by a skeletal, emaciated being, then forced to watch as intestines pour out. Her ordeal ends when she's knocked unconscious with a blunt instrument, her head left grotesquely damaged. Emily, trying to find Bobby, comes face to face with a staff member sanding the fingerprints off a severed hand, erasing the evidence as methodically as possible. Emily also found herself strapped to a table for a makeshift lobotomy. The doctor tries to drill open her skull manually, pausing only to call for an electric drill when the process proves inefficient. And a nurse, left to supervise, gets a kick out of poking a finger into the exposed skull, escalating the horror by pouring antiseptic directly into the wound. At the end, it was revealed that Dr. Benway is trying to save his wife at any cost, and that means every patient isn't seen as a person so much as a necessity for organ harvesting or for experimentation.
I'm not nearly as vain as it looks. All these awards and compensation are really a means to an end. This hard work has allowed me to move down here and open this clinic for people who really need the help.
The whole hospital is designed to trap, confuse, and keep guests unaware until it's too late. Patients arrive, but nobody leaves. Victim, 2010. A young man is pulled from his routine, ambushed, and wakes up disoriented in a makeshift prison deep in a basement, all fluorescent glare and anonymous walls. That's how 2010's The Victim starts. The voices of Dr. Volk and his assistant George start as instructions: get up, eat, do as you're told. But things quickly escalate into something far more disturbing. Day after day, the captive is battered with water hoses, half-starved, and his fingertips are burned, all before the real purpose of his confinement emerges. Volk isn't merely punishing, he's breaking every piece of the man's identity, enforcing new habits and appearances that erase who he was.
I expect the utmost cooperation from you in the time we're going to spend together. Do you understand?
Medical tools appear. The captive is cut, altered, forced through procedures designed to reshape fundamental biology. Castration, cosmetic surgery, hormone doses. And each step is calculated to chip away at resistance until the body itself no longer fits the memory of who he is supposed to be. Etiquette lessons blare from speakers, dresses replace jeans, and his reactions are scrutinized by a doctor determined to eliminate traces of the man's old self.
I can't stop crying.
I have something for you to wear.
What's that?
Put it on.
Why?
The methodical aim is not just transformation, but total erasure, demanding compliance with Volk's obsessive control right down to how the captive speaks and moves. Volk's grief over his daughter and his apparent obsession with her turns the victim into a canvas. The man must cease to exist as the man and instead become a stand-in for the daughter Volk lost. Repeated escape attempts are met with escalating penalties. A blackout here, another round of forced procedures there. His memory cannot be trusted as the new identity merges itself into his mind. Volk's motivations are rooted in vengeance as the man was revealed to be involved in his daughter's suffering. The horror is less about answers and more about process, submission, and the fundamental stripping of someone's identity through everything from surgery to behavioral reprogramming. Level 4. The Seasoning House, 2012. Few films are as unnerving as The Seasoning House. This British horror drama, directed by Paul Hyatt, sets itself in the wreckage of the Balkan conflict, capturing an environment where law has broken down and cruelty flourishes. The first moments follow soldiers storming a small village, killing its people and abducting girls to sell into victors' decrepit.
Whatever life you knew, it's gone. There is nothing outside these walls for you to believe in anymore. Your life now is here, with me.
It's here the movie hones in on Angel, a deaf, mute orphan marred by trauma, temporarily spared from the fate of the others so she can work as Victor's assistant. Angel spends her days moving from room to room, injecting a strong into the veins of captive girls so they go limp and stop fighting. She pulls them upright once the men have left, cleans the blood from their wounds, and tries to make sure the next time isn't worse than the last. Angel hardly ever tries to speak, unable to hear the screams through the walls, but she understands what's happening. Being mute and deaf keeps Angel both invisible and pivotal. She befriends another girl, Vanya, who knows sign language.
My father was deaf. He is dead.
But things start to get worse when the soldiers who killed Angel's family return for the night, bringing bottles and their own terror. Vanya is dragged away, left with Ivan, one of the worst men. Angel hides in the ceiling, watching as Vanya's body is left, motionless, and Ivan leaves the room with bloody hands. When Angel crawls into the aftermath and finds Vanya's lifeless form, she picks up a blade and uses it for the first time, catching Ivan by surprise as he returns.
What the f is happening in there? Right! Ivan! Victor! Victor!
The house becomes a maze of pursuit as she's hunted by those who claim to own her. There are no villains with grand plans, just ordinary men turning misery into an industry. Angel's retaliation is the last gasp of survival in a war with no rules. Exhibit A, 2007. Everything about Exhibit A from 2007 circles back to Judith's camcorder. It's a witness, never missing a moment as the King family edges closer to disaster. You see the family's attempts to keep up appearances, the optimism that comes when Andy, the father, announces a big promotion, dreams of a beach house, all of it being recorded day after day. Judith, behind the lens, keeps a low profile, recording parties, arguments, and secrets. She also films her neighbor Claire revealing a private infatuation. The King family is pushed to the limit by financial issues that only get worse each day. Andy fails to get the promotion he was counting on, but tries to hide it.
Oh, you're talking about the promotion? I got that. Really? Promised, didn't I?
The pretense takes a toll. You can spot it in his mood swings, his weird outbursts at parties, and his growing suspicion that the family is talking behind his back. Judith picks up on all of it, her camera never switching off, turning family life into a kind of surveillance tape. Eventually, Andy's friend Ray shows up at a pool party, his battered face hinting at violence.
Do you really think that I would attack somebody for a stupid job? A mess? I mean, somebody I've fucking trained up.
What? You never even got the job.
The confrontation reveals Andy might have hurt Ray for personal gain, while his own family starts to realize he's been lying. Andy's breakdown grows more obvious. He begins snooping through bedrooms. The camcorder captures him rifling through his son Joe's things and finding evidence of substance use, while also discovering that Judith's attachment to Claire is not so innocent either. The resulting arguments get more bitter, privacy fades away, and you're left with a real-time record of the family coming apart. Tensions peak when Andy locks the house, disables the lights, and corners his family. He exposes everything, Judith's secret and Joe's hidden life, without hesitation, almost like he's reading from a list.
Look, Angel, you know,
You've just outed your daughter, you freak!
Angel, look, I just didn't want you to have the pressure, that's what I'm saying.
What follows is brutal in its directness. The camera's perspective turns on Andy as he becomes more frenzied, threatening, and unreceptive to reason. Andy is now fully fixated on his plan: eliminate his family. He lashes out with Joe, his wife screams, and he crushes Andy in an embrace that turns deadly. One by one, he carries out his plans. In the very last moments, the camcorder rolls to show Judith's face, leaving the outcome disturbingly unresolved. The Cavern. The Cavern from 2008 focuses on 8 explorers stumbling into a cave system in Kazakhstan, not really sure what they're getting into. From the beginning, there's a sense that whoever or whatever is inside the cave isn't just some ordinary threat. A feeling made sharper every time the light from their headlamps bounces off the walls, showing just enough to keep them guessing at what might be lurking past the next bend.
She's right. Footprint.
Well, then somebody move the cord.
Or something.
The claustrophobia is constant, pressing in as group members vanish one at a time, leaving the rest to panic and scramble to figure out if they've wandered too far or if something's watching them. It doesn't take long before they find out that the cave is more than just empty stone. There are clues, the worst kind. A body of a colleague laid out and wrapped in animal skins like some kind of grotesque offering, meat sliced from bone with someone's own personal touch. They find old snapshots of survivors of a plane crash, or so it seems, until the photos point straight at the lost history buried in the cave.
Peter. Russian. Yeah. He would have been 24.
The group is forced to pick through the leftovers from the previous disaster. Soon the realization sinks in that the only thing left to eat isn't really food at all. It's someone they knew, a dead friend turned into survival rations. The meal leaves no comfort, just nausea and disbelief as they chew and swallow because there's nothing better waiting in the dark. When the monster finally makes itself known, it isn't something imagined, not some supernatural force. Instead, it's revealed as Peter, a man who lived through the plane crash, who's been surviving for years in isolation, reshaped by the cave into some primal, savage version of humanity. The group's horror spikes not just because Peter is brutal. He's able to end lives with a snap, tosses the survivors aside like paper, and takes what he wants with absolute disregard. He doesn't hesitate and doesn't speak, he just acts out of animal instinct and a warped force born from years trapped in darkness alone. There's no closure of the film. It all ends in silence, leaving Peter alone all over again. Carver, 2008. 2008's Carver starts off like so many other horror movies. A weekend camping trip with a group of friends that ends up taking a sinister, unexpected turn. Things get strange fast when the group stumbles into a deal with a local bar owner, agreeing to help him retrieve supplies from a cabin nearby in exchange for free drinks.
How about I throw in a night of drinking on the house? Party on me.
Inside that rundown cabin, the group finds old film reels and, seeing an outdated projector, naturally they decide to see what's on it. At first, it looks like a cheap horror flick, but the reaction in the room changes quickly. The footage is raw, showing people suffering graphic harm and outright dismemberment in a setting that looks eerily similar to their own. There's a shift from curiosity to dread as they pull the reels away and try to shake off the images, but there's no losing that sense of impending danger, especially since whoever made those films might still be out there. From there, it descends into the kind of explicit bodily harm rarely shown in mainstream movies. One infamous sequence involves a male character suffering a castration, captured through a relentless close-up perspective that avoids cutaways, forcing viewers to witness every moment without any relief. There's another scene showing someone stepping onto a nail, the camera following the sharp tip as it tears through the flesh. The antagonists, known as the Carver brothers, are not faceless monsters. They're men who get gleeful about what they're filming. They see themselves as creators, obsessed with making their own films and willing to do anything for a few more scenes. Every act, every bit of violence is documented by these brothers, making cameras as much of a threat as the knives or saws. Level 5. Excision, 2012. The 2012 film Excision centers on Pauline, an outcast teenager fixated on her younger sister Grace, who suffers from cystic fibrosis and desperately needs new lungs. Pauline is determined to prove her worth to her mother, who exerts near total control over the household and shows little warmth toward her older daughter.
You're trying to ruin my life.
This dynamic creates a powder keg at home, but the majority of the tension is in Pauline's own mind, where disturbing fantasies and medical gore are depicted in vivid, almost abrasive detail, suggesting her need for approval. In these dreamlike moments, Pauline isn't shy about interacting with brutalized bodies or bathing in blood. They act as her escape and her assertion of control in a world where she feels powerless and rejected. School offers no relief, and Pauline's behavior increasingly disturbs classmates and adults. At one point, she stuns everyone with questions about disease transmission in extremely taboo scenarios, signaling how completely her morbid interests have overwhelmed normal boundaries.
What new transmitted disease can I expect to acquire?
Everything finally erupts when Pauline decides the only way to save Grace is to take matters into her own hands. While her mother is away, Pauline her father and restrains his movements. She then lures in a neighborhood girl and subdues her, repeating the same method with Grace herself. The garage has been transformed into a makeshift operating room stocked with kitchen tools and the determination of someone totally convinced they're doing the right thing. Without hesitation, she opens up both bodies, removing the lungs from the healthy girl and attempting the transplant on Grace, believing love and drive can overcome her lack of expertise or preparation. Her inability to see the horror of the act is what gives the movie its unnerving edge. Pauline's mother arrives home to a horrifying scene, her husband bound, the garage filled with blood, and her eldest explaining the success of her homemade surgery.
I didn't know what to do with her body after I successfully retrieved the lump, so I practiced my incisions.
The scene is direct, but the discomfort is total. Excision's finale lingers long after because the violence is disturbingly calm and rooted in a desperate effort to be a good and likable kid, even if it means doing the unthinkable. Kidnapped, 2010. The evening begins quietly, with the family enjoying their luxurious new home. But everything changes when three masked intruders crash through the door without warning or reason, shattering any sense of safety. That is the premise of Kidnapped from 2010, a Spanish home invasion horror thriller. One by one, everyone is rounded up, stripped of phones, and left with no options. The father, Jamie, is hauled away by the so-called leader, forced at knife point to withdraw funds from one ATM after another, every deviation from their plan threatening consequences back at the house for his wife Marta and daughter Isa. It's never clear if any decision will be the right one, only that the clock ticks mercilessly and the criminals seem to have all the time they need. A boyfriend who shows up unwittingly is immediately overpowered, becoming another pawn in their game. With each new arrival, the threat level spikes. A security guard at the door gets his throat cut, his visit over in seconds. Attempts to escape push the criminals to new levels of rage. Among the most indefensible moments, face beaten beyond recognition and the head smashed repeatedly with a sledgehammer, force so unrestrained that it leaves no room for doubt about the consequences. When desperation takes hold, another character tries to intervene only to be shot. Survival here is just endurance. Minutes dragging out as another family member is repeatedly stabbed in the stomach. By the time it takes a final irredeemably dark turn, nearly everyone has been reduced to the most vulnerable version of themselves, their ability to fight worn down by both the physical and mental siege. The film's technical choices, long, unbroken takes, minimal cuts, trap viewers alongside the family with no relief, offering no catharsis. You're caught in a nightmare, and there is no waking up. Stoic, 2009. The story of Stoic from 2009 is a depiction of cruelty inside a prison cell. Cigarettes, stories, low-stakes bets. It starts almost typical, just men killing time. When Mitch, the new cellmate, loses a dare and refuses to eat toothpaste, The mood turns ugly.
I'm not gonna eat this toothpaste, man. What do you mean you're not gonna fucking eat the toothpaste? He's not gonna eat the fucking toothpaste?
The intimidation is casual at first, then relentless. Soap wrapped in a towel becomes a weapon. The group pushes him verbally and physically, insisting rules must be followed. Forcing him to eat the toothpaste, they don't care even when he chokes and retches. Mitch finds no reprieve. The next round of humiliation is nastier. Drinks laced with substances from the toilet, laughter whenever he gags, and more pushing.
Come on. It's just a little coffee, a little salt, a little peppers. Come on. Let's see you drink it. Smells good.
He's cornered into consuming the mess despite his protests. The game morphs into something brutal. His suffering escalates when the group decides his vomiting isn't enough. He's told to clean up with his tongue. Whenever Mitch tries to resist or call for help, things get worse. He's pinned to the ground and forced to drink more foul liquids as punishment for pressing the emergency button. Then the men start taking turns pushing boundaries further. There's no escape, no interruption. At the end, the group decides on a permanent fix, convincing Mitch there's no alternative but to end his life, with the promise that his act will help them get lighter sentences. They orchestrate his death, from setting up the bed sheets to pushing him to perform the final act while they stand and watch. The film ends not with redemption, but with interviews, hollow alibis, and regret that never redeems anyone. Human Pork Chop, 2001. Directed by Benny Chan-Chi-shun, The Human Pork Chop is a Hong Kong Category 3 film released in 2001 that revolves around the events of one of the most unsettling real-life crime incidents in Hong Kong's history. The film dives into the story of a young woman working as a prostitute who gets involved with a triad-run gang due to her desperate need for cash. Instead of glamorizing anything, the story unfolds with scene after scene of humiliation, coercion, and outright cruelty from the gang members, each moment pushing her further into isolation, compliance under the haze of and hopelessness. She's beaten, mocked, paraded, and stripped of every shred of dignity. And this isn't the sort of violence that's cartoony or played for shock. It's the sort that reveals just how little empathy some people are willing to extend to another human being, especially when they're convinced she's stolen from them. The group treats her like a nuisance, an object, and something to be disposed of rather than a person. Their cold logic means anything goes. Forcing her to consume things no one should consume, and keeping her barely conscious so she can't fight or run. What's especially unnerving is the realism. The movie is based on the real Hello Kitty case from 1999 in Hong Kong. It's about a woman's body that was discovered with parts of it concealed in a Hello Kitty doll and other places in the apartment. The real victim's backstory is blended into the movie's narrative, her attempts to escape and her back alley world, her desire to help her family, and her ultimate fall into the hands of monsters. Level 6. Girl Hell 1999. Misaki's world in The Girl Hell 1999 is suffocating from the start. Misaki is never allowed to forget how trapped she is and how alone one can be. At 17, carrying burdens even most adults would never face, she juggles caring for a bedridden, unresponsive sister with a mother who's simply vanished, leaving her to navigate it all alone. The house is trashed, the kitchen a mess, and screams echo through the hall. Nothing is safe, nothing is stable. The father's presence offers no comfort either. Each day starts with dread instead of hope. Getting up, she's already on edge, bracing for her father's rage, his hands, his words, the way he looks at her and her sister, and the mess he's made of both of their lives. The fact that her sister is wounded from a car wreck only drives the knife in deeper. Taking care of someone who can barely move means always being reminded that things used to be better, and now they're not.
何年か前に母親が蒸発してからその姉ちゃんが交通事故かなんか起こしてすっげえ優しい子だって近所でも評判でさ
There's some escape, but it's hardly that. A mentally ill homeless woman on the street talking to herself and carrying a filthy doll as if it's her lifeline. Misaki brings her what she can, gravitating to her because even in the mess of her madness, there's something real, something that feels gentler than what waits back home.
ほら、春子ちゃんこんなに綺麗になったよ。いいな、春子ちゃんにはお母さんがいて。
But it gets worse. Two men roam around their neighborhood, and their violence is methodical. They seek out women and attack them with a baseball bat, leaving bodies battered, broken, and stripped of dignity twice over, then again with another beating afterwards, as if determined to erase any opening for hope or survival. The men's faces do not register guilt or doubt. Their attacks are routine, as if they're performing chores, and that's what makes it more disturbing. For Misaki, anyone could be next. Her, the homeless woman, someone else unlucky enough to be in the wrong place. There is no protection, no hero waiting to save the day. There's only survival, and sometimes not even that. Crazy Murder 2014. The Crazy Murder from 2014 plunges straight into the chaos of the unvisited corners throughout New York City. The main character, disheveled, wild-eyed, filthy, pulls viewers into a raw, unfiltered look into urban decay.
Threatened my life? 30 years old a month ago. Fuck you. Fuck you.
There's no backstory, no explanation, and no attempt to soften the brutality. The lead isn't a vigilante and isn't seeking vengeance. He simply wanders, driven by urges, each step unpredictable, each encounter marked by violence.
What the dude, I got
Graphic, stomach-turning sequences pile up. The camera focuses as he gouges himself, bleeds, picks at wounds, chews on garbage. He strips in the street, defecates, smears filth around, eats excrement in prolonged, revolting scenes. Pedestrians become targets. There's a moment when a victim is knocked cold, then defiled so gruesomely that it'll make you look away. The main character squats and empties his bowels while showing zero remorse, then moves on. The act feels spontaneous, disconnected, and never driven by reason, just compulsions.
I mean, he smells disgusting. There's really no way to understand somebody like that. What goes on in their head, it can't translate to people like us.
There's one particularly jarring episode. The lead doesn't hesitate when faced with a parent clutching a baby. The aftermath is on full display, lacking empathy or censorship, filmed so bluntly and shot with shaky handheld camera work that never lets the audience relax. This depiction of urban life rips away any romantic ideas about the city. There's nothing mysterious here, nothing to be solved. August Underground's Penance, 2007. This movie stands out as one of the most notorious films in the extreme horror scene, largely for its relentless realism and the way it never lets up, not even for a second. Directed by Fred Vogel, August Underground's Penance from 2007 is shot entirely from the perspective of two serial killers, Peter and Krusty, as they roam from one crime to the next with a camera always in hand. Everything is handheld and uncomfortable by design, almost as if the audience has been thrust into a snuff tape, creating a visual experience that's almost impossible to escape. The infamous reputation comes from how the film commits to documenting cruelty and exacting unfiltered detail. Instead, Penance leans into extreme disgust. Victims are forced to undergo intense humiliation and psychological breaking. Scenes include a man with nails pounded into various body parts, A family violated in their own home, instances of degradation that continue unrelentingly for long stretches. Real animal parts used on set, actors actually vomiting during takes because of how convincing things became. Vogel wanted no cutaways, just a rolling document of atrocity.
This ultra snuff stuff that the August Underground movies are is its own little branch. You're watching the personal home video of a serial killer.
The performers, Vogel himself and Christy Wiles, aren't just empty monsters. Occasionally their behavior slips into normalcy, goofing off, showing affection or vulnerability in between sessions of brutality, which paradoxically makes them far more disturbing. By the end, the two main characters are so broken by what they've done to themselves and each other that the screen itself feels contaminated. Level 7. Goodbye, Uncle Tom, 1971. Goodbye, Uncle Tom is the kind of film where every frame dares viewers not to flinch. It's an Italian-made Mondo docudrama from 1971, infamous for restaging the horrors of American slavery with pitiless detail. There's no sugarcoating. A faux documentary crew wanders through recreated southern plantations, slave ships, medical wards, auction blocks, and forced labor fields, watching as the worst facets of human nature play out. These filmmakers sifted through period documents, turning historical accounts of human trafficking and dehumanization into scenes so graphic and bizarre that many critics call it a hallucination.
God is white, and as long as God is white, we shall prevail over all other races.
Some scenes feel barely survivable. Women are immobilized by chains and branded, their bodies treated like cattle in breeding farms, while crowds of well-dressed whites look on, acting as if nothing is amiss. Children are paraded and auctioned and prodded, their identities erased, their bodies tagged with numbers. Some even handed bowls to eat scraps off the floor beneath the tables of rich plantation owners. The film doesn't stop there. It shows forced enemas overseen by medical experts who refer to their subjects as little more than livestock. The camera lingers as slaves are forced to consume repulsive substances as punishment, their humiliation delivered by people who barely bother to look them in the eye.
You see, the disease is erythema, a quarter from these filthy, don't you know?
Auction scenes reach another level of cruelty. Men have their teeth knocked out one by one, women displayed, and viewers left to wonder how these actors endured the experience. There are scenes of forced breeding, with pregnant Haitian women corralled into pens to simulate the historical stud farms, and white traders declaring this a business, not a crime. Wealthy buyers prod, grab, and measure every part of their captives, commenting freely on flesh, as if at a livestock auction.
Look at these spaniels. Inspect them real close. Moist, green, full of seed. Just look at those attributes.
What emerges is a relentless, brutal, deeply controversial chronicle. One that doesn't just expose the mechanics of historical cruelty, but also generates outrage for recreating those scenes for entertainment. Hundreds of Haitian extras suffered for the shoot, many reportedly chosen for their vulnerability, which only intensifies the film's reputation as exploitation. Ostermontag, 1991. In 1991, Ostermontag is known to be a notoriously extreme German underground splatter film that doesn't really care about narrative structure or sympathetic characters. This film is pure provocation from the first scene. The story follows Heiko, who is obsessed with his stepsister twins, but makes a catastrophic mistake by targeting the wrong sibling. That's all it takes for everything to spiral, with Heiko waking up in a psychiatric care after his outburst. Years later, he breaks free, convinced that the surviving twin is the one for him, and nothing is going to get in his way. Not reason, not morality, nothing at all. What comes next is what has earned Ostermontag a reputation as one of the nastiest films out there. Heiko stalks and corners his target and uses whatever is on hand. Needles are driven into sensitive areas, people are whipped until their skin splits, lips are sewn together, eyes are poked out, and faces are burned and sliced open, all in long, lingering close-ups. When escape attempts happen, the response is vicious. Kicking, beating, and humiliation, including urination on victims who are trapped, unable to defend themselves. For most films, this would be the climax, but for Ostermontag, it's just the main course. The movie finds ways to ramp up the cruelty, pushing well past discomfort into outright revulsion. There's disembowelment, hands cut off, flesh flensed, entire sequences dedicated to showing pain inflicted with instruments or fists. One infamous scene has 3 men subjecting their bound, silent victim to humiliation in a dingy bathroom, ending with mocking laughter. The emotional core is contempt, not fear. By the final act, scenes of facial removal and internal organs displayed are no longer shocking, they're just part of the rhythm. The film's reputation is well earned. Ostermontag never pauses to ask why or to give comfort. It just keeps going, bearing everything and flinching at nothing. If you want to see more videos like this one, check out our most disturbing Lost Movies Volume 2 Iceberg.